Hi, people. How have you been? Nice to have you again. Welcome to Upside Wealth episode 2. We are really delighted to have you. Hope you really enjoyed our episode 1. Hope you've shared it with your friends. Hope you've had introspective moments with yourself. And just to recap a bit, last week we talked about financial stability. We delved deep into what is financial security. We talked about human capital and what it means to each and every one of us. And so we just want to pick it up from there today, and we want to talk about money utility, not quantity, So many times we find ourselves having conversations with people, and you just hear how someone spent, for example, 100,000, and you're thinking, that could not have been me. So it's good for us to have a conversation about money utility and not quantity. So again, of course, I have Timothy with me.
Yay!
Hey,
How
Timothy.
Are you people?
How have you been?
Good.
Perfect.
Yeah, excited to be here again. Last time it was phenomenal. The feedback has been overwhelming, you guys, and we'll continue this conversation. It's a journey that we've started, and we want to see it surprise us, as we go.
Yeah. So thank you, Timothy. And probably we could just start with a controversial statement, and I'll let Timothy explain it. Today we are saying money is not absolute. It's relative.
Good.
Timothy.
Joy.
Yeah.
Utility is something I learned in my first year of undergrad, but it is hit me recently on the true meaning of it. By then I was just an academic person, but now I have a better view of understanding utility, how it can be very impactful in one's life. If you have water, right, the value of water is dependent on how much thirst you have.
Very true.
Right?
Very true.
Water, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in the desert and you're dying and you have this ton of money, right? You can buy 500 ml of water at even 5 million shillings.
Yeah.
Right? It's 5 ml of water at 5 million Kenyan shillings.
Yeah.
Because it is how much you need it. Okay? And then what happens when you take the first bottle? You bought 5 at 5 million. The thirst is quenched. So do you really need that water so much? So the need reduces. Yeah. Right? The magnitude of how much you need that water continues reducing. So the next bottle, possibly you can buy like 100K. Yeah, I might need reserves, but I have quenched the basic thirst, right?
Yeah.
What about the third and the fourth? What about if someone sold you a whole 20 liter? At one time, you not even take it for free.
Yeah.
Right? It shows you that the utility of something, it is dependent on how much we need it.
Yeah, true.
Okay? And then that brings us to the concept of relativity. That how much I need it, the impact and significance of that money to me is very personal.
Yeah.
It cannot be equated to you. And a very good example, even now in the context of money that you can relate with. If I have 100 people, right? Let's take 100 listeners right now who are listening. We gave everyone 100,000 shillings who is listening to this podcast. That 100,000 shillings will mean very different things to different people.
That's very true. Very true. Yeah.
It will mean very different. There's someone in the hospital. It is all they needed.
It's a matter of life and death for them.
Exactly.
Very true. Yeah.
There is another person in this podcast who possibly it will mean, going to holiday. There is another person in this podcast.
Yeah.
Who no one will even know, even they'll not even feel excited. Yes, it's 100,000, yes, but then what?
What is 100,000?
It's not that I had so much need of 100,000. Yeah. I had settled, all the needs that could have bought 100,000, right? So it is very important to understand money in that concept, that it is not absolute.
Yeah.
It is not the zeros. There are people here who, we gave 1 million shillings, it is life-changing money.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That even when they go home, their families will feel something changed. There was an earthquake out there and, the life changed forever.
Yeah.
They will move, they'll buy new things, new furniture. Kids might even change school. They might even move neighborhood. They might even change a JRP and buy a better car or, just have the first car. It is life-changing money. And in this podcast, there are still people listening to us that if we give them 1 million shillings, even their partners or their kids won't know there was money given anywhere.
Yeah, true.
Because what is 1 million to them, right? This is the money they spend in 2 days on holiday.
It's pocket change.
It's pocket change.
Yeah.
And so what that then helps us understand that the value of money, it is not in the zeros. It is not in the amount. It is on the impact that money has on our lives.
That's deep. That's very deep, Timothy. And I think it's so interesting because sometimes as women, we have conversations or even girlfriends and you're just discussing bare minimum, clothes or jewelry. And someone tells you, I spent 5,000 on a necklace, and you're thinking, you spent how much? You're thinking, if I walk downtown, I can find something that looks similar to that with a few hundreds. But then again, like you said, it's money is so personal. And I think for me, that's something that we have to get to a point of understanding, because I feel like so many of us, the reason why we struggle or the reason why we make mistakes is because we think 100,000 is 100,000. But the truth is 100,000 is not 100,000. And by the way, 100,000 is just a figure we have picked for purposes of this episode. But come to think of it, there's just someone who thinks that is money that could pay my rent for years, and I've seen jokes we have seen people on social media post receipts of money they used, for example, in a club. And you'll hear people making comments like, yo, that is someone's rent. That is someone's school fees. And it's because we don't understand that just because I have 100,000, the way I use it is not the way Timothy will use it, for example. Maybe for Timothy, that is money he can go and splash on his guy friends, his boys club.
On that one, you say amen. I want to be there where 100,000 is something that I would just go and spend and not even lose the slightest amount of sleep. And do you know what, Joy? And that is even why a lot of financial advice that is even in a lot of channels, whether physically, it is not very effective in changing people's life because it is given from a person point of money utility.
Yeah.
Right? So today, if you're going to tell someone, oh, you need, why did you spend 3 million to buy a car or 10 million to buy a car? That is a lot of money. It's from your point of view that is a lot of money. To that person's point of view, it is a whole different.
Yeah.
There's a time there's a conversations about debt capital and how people are building houses in the villages. And I saw a conversation. How could you build a 10 million house in Ushago? 10 million shillings to that. If that person is worth 100 million, that is barely 10% of his income. You are thinking 10 million shillings as your dream goal, the amount you want to have. So people are driving cars that are your dreams here. People are living home.
Someone is actually living your dream.
Your dream right now, right? People here are paying school fees, your net worth in one term. And so we need then not to be very invested in then thinking about the value, the zeros, the amount.
The quantity.
And we start now coiling down to what is the impact of money in our lives. And I think this then evolves very well to something called groupthink. We live in a social world where we have interactions at work. We are in chamas. We are in boys' club, right? We have acquaintances. We go to church together. And every time then there are conversation around money, we assume that we are all equal, right? Being social beings, we have emotions. And one of the biggest power in us, or forces in us, is something power of belonging. You want to fit in. You don't want to say no because these are friends you have. You want to be seen to belong. And the forces, there's a deep force in us that wants us to belong, to be accepted. Right? And sometimes it blurs that our lives are different. The fabric of finances is cut from different clothes. And we need to believe on that.
Timothy, I think that's a very emotive subject to talk about because we all have identity and we draw our identity from very different things. Some of us draw our identity from the groups we belong to.
Sure.
Some of us draw identity to the cars that we drive. I mean, in this country, you're going to see we have Audi Association of Kenya, Subaru Queens, Subaru Association of Kenya. Yes. I mean, we draw our identity from so many things, but most time than not, in those identity, finances become part of it, For you to fit in a particular boys club, for example, there's a chama, them they save money to do trips around the world.
Yes.
That's an identity. And I think one of the things that you've touched, and for me is a very sensitive subject, is group thinking. And there's something we call corporate movement, where I feel like if my friends are able to get 50,000 to go, for example, to Mombasa for 5 days or for 3 days, I should be able to do the same. And I think one of the things that we make mistakes is the fact that, number one, our income levels are not the same. Secondly, our obligations in life are not the same. So, for example, if I have a group of friends who have each a kid, or if I'm young and my friends are not even married, they don't have kids, and I have a number of kids, my obligations with them is very different. So the fact that I'm already assuming the fact that I don't have obligations, right there's a problem.
And actually, you've touched a very good point.
Yeah.
For long, in this country, there are people who are parents' pensioners. You are the pension for your parents and your folks. So you have, in this side of the world, that is Africa, there's something called black tax.
Black tax.
Your village, your clan, your extended family depends on you. So these are 100,000 shillings, right? And I know sometimes it's just where we find ourselves in. It's unfortunate. I hope the world Africa will change for the better. But it's where we find ourselves in.
But I also don't think, come to think about it, Timothy, sometimes I don't think it's actually a very bad thing.
It's not about actually. It brings great gratification to us.
Because the thing is, I feel like someone made a sacrifice for some of us to be where we are.
True.
Why does it become an issue when it's your time to make the sacrifice?
To give it back.
To give back, you understand? But then again, because you're trying to fit in a particular space or you want to belong somewhere, it becomes a both or a bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll give you a story. I like relating to real life stories. So one of my clients gave me a story when we were having a discussion, and he told me how some years back they had a church group. And they were really good friends. They used to go around and they used to host each other. They were like a pack of 10 families. And one day they decided, okay, we need to go beyond hosting to our homes. And we need to go to a holiday. And him and the family was given a bill of about 300,000. That was the amount of rights and I think 3 days stay in, Diani.
Yeah.
And at that point, because of the exuberance and euphoria of the moment, he did not reflect back of what is 300,000 to me. What is 300,000 to me, to the family? What does 300,000 mean? How much do we need this money? And so he said yes. Actually, he was the first to, they call it
a transfer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In meetings, there's a secondment. Who seconds the point? Hey, here I am. Yeah, let's do it. 300,000. So we need 150,000 for bookings, sent to Joy, and then he'll do the logistics.
Yeah.
Then they go. I think it was around December. So they go to Diani, and they spend that beautiful time. And I can tell you guys, much as we're talking about money is also good. It makes us have good experiences.
Yes,
but we also don't want to be at the expense of what is vital. That is why we are having this conversation. Yeah. We don't want the exuberance and the good life be the source of then a huge discomfort in the future. And so what happens? They go to Diani, they have good time, and then they come back. And then they come back around that time of Christmas, and then they rest a little bit. And then what comes in January?
School fees. Yeah. Yeah.
And so my client told me that then he realized he didn't have money for school fees.
What?
And the kids are going to school, 3 of them. And their school fees policy, the school the kids used to go, was that you have to pay within the first week.
Wow. Okay.
So what does he do? They lashed to now, credit bureaus.
Yeah.
The credit could not be processed as fast because then he had maxed, I think, his borrowing limit. So he goes to Shylock. He pledges his car.
Wow.
Yeah. Because he need about 150,000 to pay school fees. Yeah. Then he goes and pledges his car as a security, and then he's given 150,000. And he told me, like, in 6 months, his financial situation spiraled so badly, terribly, that he almost even lost the family. He almost even broke up with the wife and everything. And it's also because in a family, you are presumed, you the breadwinner, that you are making good plans. No one will question what you're doing. Like if today I went and told my wife, hey, we are going to Thailand. Yeah, you shouldn't ask me, are you planned well? No. You'll be like, yeah, this best loving husband
They
ever.
trust
They trust me that I'm making plans, that this 300,000 is only the only money we have. The kids will gonna question you that, hey, why do you not take us to Diani? No, they'll be like happy. You'll be the best dad,
father, yeah.
right? But then what happens? What happens after you've come and you're telling them, hey, you guys, you need to change school because the money you spent in Diani,
that was your school fees.
That was your school fees, So what you're insisting and what you're saying in this is that money is personal.
And I think it's a good time to just take a pause. Yeah? I really want you to ask yourself, what is my current financial status? What are those decisions that I have made short term? Could be now, could be a few months ago, could be a few years ago, and you're still struggling with the effects of those things. Remember, we say this is a very candid, raw conversation where we are going to introspect and ask ourselves, how many times have you said yes? How many times have I as Joy said yes? And by then, let me tell you, this conversation that I'm having with Timothy, when we started having conversations around starting this podcast, I was telling Timothy it made me sit down and have some very serious conversations with myself. And I'm like, honestly, I would have done better. And the reason why we are having this conversation, like Timothy is saying, is because we really want to trigger your thought process, even as you make financial decisions. When he talks about group mentality, I'm sure that guy did not have a conversation with the rest of his friends and ask, so how are we paying school fees in January?
Exactly. Actually, that is a problem, Joy, of mentality. Yeah. And it brings us to even a bigger discussion.
Yeah.
There's a Buddhist mantra that talks about know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
Know yourself.
Mm.
And what I've discovered that we don't know ourselves. We just throw. We don't know ourselves.
Mm.
So take time to understand yourself, your financial situation, what you can and can't do.
Mm.
And one of the biggest tempting things and how you can control a lot of then this group thing, group mentality, is then allowing yourself, right? Dependent on your personality, because we have different personality.
Temperaments
are different.
Sanguines.
And so there are people who are just happy. They just want to be happy and they'll fund that happiness for whatever the cost.
Yeah.
For ladies, they're impulse buyers,
It's not our
One
fault.
of the biggest things in life is something called temptations, right? And even for people who are Christian, Jesus said, learn away from temptations, because temptations will be there. And how do you do that?
Free away from the devil.
Exactly, free away from the devil. Because what you realize is that then we tend to be stimulated.
Mm.
There are stimuli out there. Like that holiday was a stimulus.
Yep.
And you know why you respond to a stimulus? Because you can afford it. And not because that money was for that use, but because there was that money. And one of the ways to manage that is making sure that then you manage your liquidity levels.
But also, Timothy, I agree with you about it's because you could afford it. But sometimes we actually say yes to things and we can't afford them. Because I have, for example, a debt line. Like I have a credit line to myself.
Good.
Like I might not have the money right now in my account, but I know I have Tala. I know I have different, for example, service providers where I can borrow from.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I'll be able to fund that trip. The way women, we make fun of people and people make fun of our wigs and they're like, that's not your hair. And we are like, if I bought it, it's my hair.
That's a good one.
It's the same thing. So the fact that I'm able to pay for the trip, it does not matter how I paid it. It's an issue of the end justifies the means. And so many times than not, let me tell you, exactly at that point, that's where we start digging our holes.
I tell you something about, I spoke about stimuli and it just hit me. Stimuli is such a strong thing. Joy,
Mm-hmm.
you know that when you have money, you tend to see things that you should buy.
Yeah.
You walk in town and there's a mannequin wearing a cloth that can fit you. And you're like, huyu ni mimi. This is me. The attendant in the store is not even going to fetch you a size. Hii size ya mannequin ni yako.
Ni mimi.
Right? Because you go in town and you're hungry all of a sudden and you feel the smell of pizza or nice dishes, nice cuisine, and you cannot resist.
Pass,
And you know why? Figure it is. If you don't have money, do you know you don't even realize that there's foods around town?
Very true.
Yeah?
Very
When
true.
you're not liquid, when you don't have easy access to money, you don't even realize. You see, I tell you an example. and this is very relatable to women. When you're pregnant, Joy, you tend to realize a lot of people are pregnant.
Very true.
And you realize, and you're like, kwani ni msimu wa kupata mimba? I mean, like, is this a season for giving birth?
Yeah.
Or even another example, if you bought a certain type of a car, you tend to realize those cars, are on the road.
Let me tell you.
Yeah?
Now, let me even take it further. Not even when you buy a car. So, let me give an example. For the longest time, I keep saying I really love a Cayenne.
Yes.
Well, please don't judge me. It's just what I like. Whether I'm able to buy it, that's a different story altogether. But for some reason, these days when I'm on the road,
you realize
I keep seeing them to the point that when I'm in traffic, I can tell the car behind me.
Exactly.
So yeah, you have a point. You actually have
liquidity,
a point. Yeah.
It is a stimulus. It stimulates your brain to react. And one of the things then you make sure that you don't react because it will ruin your financial plans is ensuring that you have minimal liquidity. Not that you don't have money, but the access to money. Right? You have to reduce how available is your credit card. You have to reduce your credit card limits. You have to reduce how much free float you are holding that it can be expended today and right now. You pass through Gong Road and there are all these, motor selling yards, car selling yards. And you tend to be so stimulated. You see a beautiful car, the car of your dream. That Cayenne you're speaking is just staring at you, waiting for you to pay. And you're like, God, I know this is you talking to me. I need to buy this one. Because you're liquid. But when you're broke, you don't even realize they exist. So one way of then ensuring that we are very aware of the situation, and because we have different impulse susceptibility, is ensuring that we manage our liquidity levels. Because whatever you're liquid, you're already stimulated. You can afford anything.
We usually say in finance that money in the account is equals to spending.
Exactly.
As long as money is available, ni ya kutumia. Now, let me take it a step further, Timothy. We've talked about me as Joy, me as Mukami, you as Timothy, what you can do as a person. But remember, you're not a human being alone. Like, you're not a standalone. For example, like when you talk about Joy, there's me, there's my children, there's my siblings, there's my family, there's my friends, there's so many other people that contribute to who Timothy is beyond yourself.
It's true.
Now, when we talk about utility of money, one of the things that I've learned over time, and I am learning in this season of my life, is explaining things to my family.
True.
Extending it beyond having meetings with myself to having meetings with my children and saying, you know what? I know this is what you guys want, but the reality on the ground is we can't afford it.
Exactly.
And by there I've had people talking about, don't raise kids with a poverty mentality. But I think there's a difference between poverty mentality and speaking reality. Because Timothy was talking about in our first episode about just what happens when, for example, you have to downgrade. It's because you set those kids up for that lifestyle. Now you're not able to sustain it. I think it would be good even to raise more responsible citizens in the future to have conversations with our children around what is our lifestyle? What are we able to manage?
What can we afford?
What are we able to afford? What can't we afford? And I have a friend of mine who keeps telling me that no is an absolute statement. It's actually a complete statement.
You don't need to explain.
Learning to say no to friends, learning to say no to family, learning to say no to yourself, to your children. That's part of how you grow. So how do you now expand to your family and have conversations around finances? Now, some of us find ourselves, for example, in situations, and probably maybe some of you are there, where you have families that run family projects together. And the truth is, you might be from the same family, but at a very different stages of your lives in your families. You might have very different income levels. You have this brother of yours who is a director or a CEO. His income level is not what you have. How do you learn to say that it's a brilliant idea? I appreciate you guys for coming up with that thought, but I am not in that space.
I have nothing against the idea.
Yeah.
The idea is brilliant. It's
amazing.
Beautiful.
Yes.
But let's talk about who can afford and who can't afford.
Yes.
What is 100,000 to me? This 100,000 you're saying that we need to contribute to raise 1 million shillings. Okay. All right. What is 100,000 to me? This is school fees for my kids. And actually, nowadays there's a tendency, which is okay. You're in a group. You need to raise money. Possibly one of you is sick, or there's just a problem. So it's a social contribution. And so what you realize is that the people who contribute first, they're contributing huge amounts of money. 100K, 50,000. So you look at top 10 people have contributed 50,000 shillings, and you like not very prepared to say, okay, me, I can't afford 50,000. I have 10,000 and write my name in bold letters and put 10,000 there.
Yes.
It is a reality. This is my reality. You have to keep to your lane. Otherwise, you cause a collision. Do you know what we call lane discipline? Right? When you're driving, if you keep switching lanes,
you'll be hit.
Nowadays, cars are even coming with something called lane assist. That they are reminding you are shifting because you will knock someone and you'll cause a disaster. You'll cause an accident. And those accidents in our financial lives are very applicable.
Yeah.
It's lane discipline. Keep into your lane and know which lane you should follow. Unless you're following people's other lanes, and I tell you, it's you who will suffer. And the repercussions of financial mistakes, we said that last time.
Yeah.
Financial mistakes pile up so fast, so quickly. Before you know, you don't even know what happened to your money. You're even trying to explain to yourself, what did I do with this money? Actually. And you're looking at the dumb you that did all these financial mistakes without realizing. So you need to have consistent conversation, not just to yourself the way you said, especially to family. Instill with them that 100,000 to us is lent. You know, something that can just be expended. Or your school fees is 50,000 shillings. These 50,000 shillings, you can either buy that shoe of 10,000 shillings and tomorrow you're not in school.
Yeah.
Let's have candid, real conversation, not to be stingy. Because the definition of stingy is because they don't know your financial position, so they are thinking you're refusing to expend. You know? But if you approach from the point of, okay, guys, we have 500,000 in bank, all right? We have these expenses. So let's look whether what you're requesting fits into this.
Yeah.
These are our plans, okay? We are actually in a shortfall. Yes, we have 500K, but our plans require 700,000. So we actually be talking not on how to spend 20,000 in I don't know where. We should be discussing about how do we get 200,000 more, right? And even that 5-year-old kid, ask them, do you have an idea of where you can get 100,000?
Yeah.
Because that is a conversation that we need to take beyond ourselves. But sometimes, you know, our social selves bigger than thou and, you know, not wanting to have financial conversation because they are difficult, we tend to mask them, commit so many mistakes. But you know what? You can't hide for long.
And allow me to say, you know, Timothy has talked to us about talking to our young ones, to our younger siblings, to our friends who are younger than us. And I think, I don't want to say it's an African thing, because then I'll be stereotypical. But it is good for me to say that so many of us who are brought up knowing how to make money, knowing how to go to school and become the best that we could become in our fields, but so many of us did not have conversations with our parents and relatives around how to spend that money.
Exactly. And imagine how ill-equipped then we were left. Yes, you have money, and what do you do with it? It's like giving someone who's never been to driving school a car to drive and telling them, okay, this is the gas, this is the brakes, this is the steering wheel, sasa enda kwa barabara. It is without much imagination that there'll be an accident somewhere, right? And these are conversations that we need to embed in us and feel comfortable to have. It is not a conversation of mom and dad.
Yeah.
Right? It is good even that as we even make plans, are we going to buy a house? Do we have a car? You know, we need to provide a car service or insurance. Let's have on the dinner table. Let the kids have that we have a shortfall. So that tomorrow when they are making a request at the supermarket to buy an LOL dollar 6,000, they know, that is short of 100K.
PS5, what do you guys say? Yeah.
And especially as they mature, as they become teens, we protect them, even for themselves, understanding when they become responsible, when they start earning, how do they approach money?
And also, I want to challenge us today, because I know most of us belong, we've already talked about identity. We belong to chamas, we belong to boys club, we belong to girls traveling clubs. Take it a notch further. When you meet for drinks, when you meet for hangouts and snacks, have conversations with yourselves. Just ask each other. Now that you're very good friends, you travel together, you create memories together, you build together. Ask yourselves genuine questions. How is each one of you doing financially?
Good.
Of course, you're not going to the details of what is your asset base or how much do you have in the account. But you're going to be very shocked at how uncomfortable some of those conversations get. Because sometimes it takes you having those conversations for people to understand that when I say no, it's not because I'm being stingy.
No.
It's not because I don't want to have fun or go out on vacation. It's because the reality on the ground is I need to go slow. And even as we come to the end of this episode, I really want to say something that I think Timothy said it in a different way. We need to detach ourselves from areas where we don't fit.
True.
It's not easy. It's not your cup of tea or coffee.
Joy, underline that statement, internalize, put it in bold, and always remember it. Hang it on your wall and always remember.
Yeah, almost we are saying have it as your 11th commandment. Exactly. Detach yourself from places that you do not fit. It's going to come at a cost. You're going to lose friends. But sometimes detaching does not mean physically leaving. It means you're learning to speak and say, well, this time it's not doable. Maybe next time. So I really hope that you found this episode also really, really helpful. I hope it's going to be a conversation starter between you and your families, you and your friends, you and your chamas, you and your children, you and your spouse, and most importantly, between you and yourself. Call yourself for that meeting. Analyze the decisions you've made financially. Analyze black taxes that you've given and you're giving. Analyze places where you're trying to belong and you know very well that's not your place. And think about it. So please give us feedback. Again, as usual, let us interact. Tell us what you want us to talk about in our next episode or something that we've covered and has resonated with you personally. So until next time, adios.
Thank you, dear listeners. It's another episode and we're excited to have these conversations. Your support has been overwhelming and we continue to have conversations that matter to us. Till next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.